people in the county, and I know a lot of parents are going to be excited to be able to get the kids back in school. And we will, I think by October 18th, every school district will be will have been reopened by then, and you know this effect. Proud of the progress that they're making. Obviously, we stepped up at the state level to help restore the Pine Island Bridge access to be able to do that. Now what you have is you've got massive numbers of trucks that are out there working. I mean, just hundreds and hundreds of trucks. And so they've been able to fix a lot of the poles, new poles, work on the subs, all this stuff, because there was a lot of damage, but they've made huge progress. I know they already have over 50% restored and reconstructed from where it was, and they're making progress every day. And the same thing, there's hundreds of trucks on Sanibel, because we were able to get the causeway back up and running for at least those trucks, and then we'll have it for the general public very, very soon. But those are really important to be able to get that infrastructure in place so that folks can get back on their feet and bounce back. And we're happy to see that. And so I think that, and then the Fort Myers Beach, you know, the main kind of artery of power for the main streets, that's restored. And so that's back. You know, the issue with Fort Myers Beach is just because homes were destroyed, going from that artery to like a neighborhood, the homes may not be able to receive power. So that's just going to be something that's going to be a challenge. Obviously, if the home is gone, then there's going to be a need to figure out what you're going to do with that property. If a home was really damaged, maybe you can fix the home, but it's likely going to require electrical attention to be able to get your power in a situation to do. But for as big of a hit that did, to have the main thoroughfare, that's electrified. And so what the businesses would use and all that, you know, they got that back, and that's pretty remarkable given, not only given the extensive damage, but they weren't even allowed to restore because it was all the search and rescue for like the first week. And so now they've moved some debris, and so they've made good progress there. So those are all very encouraging things. It's also good to know that we have a lot of folks who stepped up to help in this response. And of course, you see the folks who wear the uniform here in your local communities that have really been This isn't anything surprising for us at the state of Florida. We've honored the people that wear the uniform from the first day I became governor, and we were fighting back against a lot of people throughout our country that were attacking law enforcement and saying that they should be defunded and marginalized, and we never bought into that here in the state of Florida. In fact, we passed legislation ensuring that a local government cannot defund a police in the state of Florida. That we saw was, okay, we understand the vital role that law enforcement plays in a situation like this, of course, because if you look at the people that were helping rescue folks, you had police officers, sheriff's deputies, you had state agencies, Coast Guard. I mean, it really spanned National Guard. It spanned the gamut. It was really, really well done. But you also just have daily life, even apart from a spectacular disaster like we've just suffered. You want to have safe streets, you want to have safe communities. That used to be something in this country that we universally expected and had in most places. Now you've seen that really erode, particularly over the last few years. You have some places in this country that are operated almost like third world countries with the crime, just totally out of control. And what happens is when that happens, the whole society starts to fray. Almost everything starts to go downhill because if people don't feel safe, if they can't go to school, go to work, operate a business, if they can't do that in safety, then a lot of times people find elsewhere to live. And so we've drawn a very hard line on that here. We're a law and order state. We're going to make sure that we keep the streets safe, and part of the way you do that is by supporting the people that wear the uniform. So we saw what was going on in other parts of the country. We saw what was going on with, yes, defunding, You had some of these prosecutors that won't prosecute criminals. You can steal from stores and they don't care. In San Francisco, steal $900 worth of stuff as long as you don't steal over $1,000. They just let you get away with it with no penalty. Wow. And so you see all this stuff that's happened. There have been a lot of media attacks on law enforcement, trying to create narratives that has been damaging. So bottom line is you have police departments across this country that the people that are out there risking their lives do not have the support of politicians, media, community, and that's not a good situation. Morale is very low, and we've seen the morale really since the Floyd riots has been probably the lowest we've seen in a long time. And so we saw an opportunity in Florida to say, you know, we want to reward people who are going into this profession. We want to value people that are going into this profession. So I proposed and the legislature enacted a program for recruitment bonuses for law enforcement personnel. So if you're coming from one of those states or one of those other cities where you're not being treated well and you come to take a job in any of our departments, municipal, county, or state, any of the agencies in law enforcement function, you qualify for a $5,000 bonus. And not just for people coming from out of state, if you have new people within Florida who have not been in law enforcement and they make the decision to go into law enforcement, they are also eligible for the bonuses that we were able to enact. And so, yeah, there's some places where law enforcement's targeted. We're doing the $5,000 bonus here, which is going at it in a much better direction. I think people appreciate it. So we have folks here today that are going to be rewarded with these $5,000 bonus checks. And so they all came on board Cape Coral PD sometime this year. Some of them only a couple months ago. They got a baptism by fire, having to go to the Caribbean, I'll tell you that. But you see how vital it is and how important it is. And so we do have 6 officers with us who are going to get the checks. 2 came in from New York, 1 from Maryland, 1 from Georgia, and then 2 are locals who are new here, which we also appreciated. And so these are going to be the first. So the legislature passed the law in the session. I signed it. It took effect July 1st. There's paperwork. People have to qualify. So now, and Dane Eagle's running this program. These are the first recruitment checks that are going to be issued from that program, but we've got 335 more in the hopper. So if you're somebody that's come from New York City or Chicago or Seattle or just new to the profession in Florida, you're going to get it. It's going to be in the mail very, very soon. So we're happy to be able to do this. We understand how important these functions are, and we are going to move heaven and earth to make sure that this state remains a law and order state. We're not going to let further showing our commitment, we were able to do an announcement yesterday in Charlotte County where, as many of you know, our First Lady, my wife Casey, has really spearheaded donations into this Florida Disaster Fund, which is something being run through Volunteer Florida and floridadisasterfund.org. People can go donate, and many have donated online. It's raised, I think now, over $45 million. They've already done, and basically they can do awards to charitable entities who are in some way in this fight to help the community recover from Hurricane Ian. Well, one of the things that we understood was an issue was we talk about these folks out there rescuing, cracking down on people trying to loot, whatever they have to do. They're out there doing it, and you see that, and you see them wearing the uniform, and I know most of you appreciate that, but you don't think about, after a storm, what they have to do to help the community. They were not immune from the storm themselves. Their homes weren't magically spared. Some had damage, some had total destruction, and yet here they are not worrying about their own situation, but worrying about your situation and worrying about how they can help. So we saw an opportunity to be able to work with some of the groups that have the charitable arms in the state of Florida through the Florida Disaster Fund. So we are doing, or probably maybe have already done, but we'll be doing it very soon if not, $2 million for, and this will be $500,000 each, the charitable arm of the Florida Sheriff's Association, Florida Police Benevolent Association, Florida Fraternal Order of Police, and the Florida Professional Firefighters. So they're going to get each $500,000. We'll probably do more. They're going to also raise more, so then they can use that to help their firefighters, their police officers, their deputies get back on their feet. And maybe someone's going to need some help with home repairs. I mean, people have insurance policies. It doesn't cover the flooding. If you don't have flood, you may have to figure out a way to do. FEMA will give you some, but usually not enough. So there's all these different things where people may have discrete needs. So we're helping to meet those needs, and I think it's going to be something that's really, really great. And we've got more in the hopper. I mean, I think the amazing thing is people have wanted to help. People have wanted to come forward. I mean, I think they see that it's making a difference. They see the community is resilient and is really working hard to bounce back. I mean, look, there's a lot more to do, don't get me wrong, but if you say we're a little more than 2 weeks into this, if this had happened in a lot of other places in our country, you wouldn't have had a fraction of the progress made as we've been able to make here. We've got a lot of got difficult roads ahead, and there's going to be a lot of issues that pop up. Some issues will pop up that we're not even thinking about right now. But we'll be here. We'll all work together to make sure. But for people to be able to look and say, you know what? Actually, someone was saying, it's like, hey, Florida is getting the power on quicker than these other states did when they had big hurricanes and all this stuff. And it's like, people put a premium on this. I mean, it's something that matters. The cutting through the red tape to get the bridges back. I don't want people sitting there mired in bureaucracy, and that's been our mantra. Really, just get it done. Do it and make it happen. And I think you've seen that. And at the local level, I think you've seen some good stuff. I think the state, we've been cutting through the bureaucracy at record pace. And I'll tell you, I mean, even with FEMA and some of the federal agencies, I mean, they've been very responsive. And I think people look back 10 years ago how some of this stuff was run. So I think we've seen improvements across the board. So we're mindful of the challenges, but I think we're really hopeful that we're going to have a really strong comeback, and I'm looking forward to being here for that. So, all right, we're going to hear from some other folks. So we'll hear from Chief Sizemore. We're going to hear from one of our officers who qualified for the bonus checks, and then Dane Eagle will come in and consecrate the checks. Okay? Yep.
Truly humbled and honored to be able to speak to everyone here, to see this great community, the friendly faces, our county commissioners, our city council, and of course to be led in by the greatest governor in the state of Florida. He alluded to it. We're just a little over 2 weeks out from one of the most catastrophic events in the United States, and that's 1776, if you keep it score. That's a long time of disasters and to be in the top 5. And to be where we are right now is just unprecedented. And there's been a lot of people that have worked very hard in the city and at the state level cooperating, pre-planning and post-storm action, what you've seen. And I'd like to take the opportunity to acknowledge my uniformed officers and professional staff for not taking a day off yet, working very hard and helping a big part of getting this city back to where we are today. There's a lot of things that go into staffing a police department, and attracting, recruiting, and retaining great talent, the best talent, is the #1 way to do that. And that's happened here in the city. I'll acknowledge our city council and our mayor working with our Fraternal Order of Police to deliver a labor contract that once again makes us the most competitive in the area by far. It's not even close. So the narrative that you see nationally of the police chief warring with the mayor or having a battle with the city council doesn't exist here. It's first name basis. They've had our back, and that's been proven, and I thank you. There's no greater supporter of law enforcement than the governor and what he's done and what this recruitment program does for us. There's a lot of people who talk about supporting law enforcement or back the blue, And I like to say, don't talk about it, be about it. And this governor is about it. And this program here, along with the cooperation that we have locally, is what makes us a destination and what is going to continue to attract and retain the top quality, the best police department in the state of Florida, one of the top in the nation. I'll put that against anybody. And I'm grateful that he's here. I'm grateful that you're here, and Cape Coral is back. Thank you.
Okay, one of our new officers from Maryland, now to Cape Coral, Officer Mercedes Phillips.
Officer Mercedes Phillips, and I've been an officer here with the Cape Coral Police Department since July 2022. Before getting hired for the Cape Coral Police Department, I worked as an officer for 3 years in Maryland, just slightly south of DC. From my firsthand experience, there's been a lot of officers that were alienated and underappreciated in this area of the country. I knew moving to Florida I would be valued and appreciated by my department, citizens, and coworkers. On top of work-life balance, I desired the ability to progress in my profession as an officer, and Governor DeSantis offered the $5,000 incentive bonus to move here. I want to thank Governor DeSantis for making Florida a state where I'm actually proud to be a police officer and serve my community. All that support from the top feeds down to small departments like ours and gives us the motivation and support to make our community that much better. It's a huge privilege. We have a governor who served in our military and is the absolute definition of leadership. So, thank you.
Okay, Dane Eagle. Where's he at?
Thank you to the governor for putting law enforcement and first responders first in this state. It is by far the most first responder and law enforcement friendly state in the nation. It's thanks to the policy that he has put forward and the legislature has helped championing behind him. So thank you to Governor DeSantis for this focus. And thank you to all of you for what you have been doing. At the Department of Economic Opportunity, we focus on people, we focus on businesses, we focus on communities, and making sure they have economic sustainability. We do that blue sky days every day. We do that especially after a storm. When it comes to law enforcement, they are, I would say, the most important workforce in the state, in history, in the world. Without law and order, there is chaos, and with chaos, there is no economic sustainability. So thanks to the work that they're doing on blue sky days, keeping our streets safe, but to the work that they're doing after the storm, making sure that we can get up and running again, is helping the governor and my agency and everybody else get back on their feet and get business up and running again. So thank you to the work that you all have been putting in. To the governor's policies and making sure that law enforcement is first, we were able to do, as the governor mentioned, $1,000 bonus payments for all first responders. And I'm told the city got those checks just before the storm hit, so that was timely. And I'm sure they're happy to have this extra $1,000. And now we're able to honor the recruits with these $5,000 bonuses. And I'll mention, thanks to the governor's leadership, it's actually more than $5,000. We know the tax man cometh. We don't want those armed IRS agents coming after them. So the check's actually $6,000 to make sure you can pay your taxes. So that's we're making sure that's covered. And I'll also mention, we were here just a few months ago in this very building. The governor announced the Hometown Heroes program, which is going to allow first responders, nurses, teachers, you name it, our hometown heroes, the ability to have down payment assistance on homes. There is a first-time home buyer requirement for that, but for those receiving this check, we are waiving that first-time home buyer requirement. So these recruits, they might need a new home. I hope you're safe and you're good, but if you need one, come talk to us. We're going to help you with that down payment assistance. So thank you for all you're doing. Thank you to Governor DeSantis, and without further ado, let's hand out these checks.
Okay. Why don't you call them and just hand them to me, and you guys can come right in front of the podium, and I'll hand it out to you.
Want to join the governor? Sure. All right, up first, Officer Bradley Delgatti.
All right.
Officer Jordan Moses. Officer Mercedes Phillips. Officer Devin Sears. And Officer Steven Specca.
we're excited to do it. As I mentioned, there's a lot more in the hopper. Dane mentioned we did, so this is the recruitment bonus. We also did for the second year in a row, we did $1,000 bonuses for all sworn law enforcement, fire, and EMTs in the entire state of Florida. And we also did the tax payment for that. So what was it, like $1,300 or something like that? So that they don't have to worry about getting hit with taxes. The ones here arrived. I think maybe the Sanibel ones got caught in the storm, and so we're in the process of, I guess you're gonna just recut those checks or figure out how we're gonna do so. So we'll do it. So if you're in Southwest Florida and you did not get your check yet, you probably would have gotten it if not for Hurricane Ian, but Dane is working on that to make sure that everybody's gonna get it, so you will get it. And I mean, obviously it's a nice thing to get anytime, but it's hitting at a good time for people here given all that they're going through. So we're happy to be able to help with that. And finally, I just want to say, there's still a lot of disappointment from yesterday's verdict in the Parkland school shooting case to deny the imposition of the death penalty for somebody that massacred so many people in cold blood and cut short so many young and vibrant and lives full of potential. It stings, and it stings a lot of people, not only in that community down in Parkland, in Broward County, but really throughout the state, and I think even throughout our country. I know that the prosecutors are pursuing some things with the jury, and I think that they should do that. I think this is something that, did you have jurors that were just never going to do this no matter what? That's not the way this system is supposed to work. What was going on? There may have been something that went on, so I think whatever legal process they have and legal tools they have available, I think they should use it, because I do think it was a miscarriage of justice. I mean, you're going to be in a situation, the state of Florida has executed people in our history who've committed really dastardly crimes, but crimes that didn't reach this level of carnage, and yet somehow he's going to be living off taxpayer expense for what, 50 years, 60 years? His victims didn't get that luxury to be able to live out those decades. And so I just think at some point you have appropriate punishment, and if you have something like capital punishment available in a case like that, it has got to be administered. That just shows kind of how the community views the severity of the offense, and I think it was 100% appropriate punishment. So disappointed, stung, but also thankful that it looks like the prosecutors may be pursuing it. Look, I don't know how those avenues ultimately work out, but I think that there's a lot of folks who were hoping for a different result. So it's a sad thing. And it's also a sad thing that this takes so long. You should have, there's a saying, justice delayed is justice denied. And when you have 4.5 years that go into this, for what? Everybody knew that he did it, and I'm not saying he doesn't get a lawyer process, but okay, what are you going to contest in this? Try to say you're crazy, this, okay, do that, but that should be done in months, not years. And yet here we are, it's taken all this time. This happened before I was even governor, and now here we are more than 4 years later. And so that's not the way I think the justice system should be operating. I mean, I think that we need to do some reforms to be better serving victims of crimes and the families of victims of crimes, and not always bend over backwards to try to do everything we need to for the perpetrators of crimes. Anybody? Yes?
I just want to thank you for your leadership.
Sure.
Not just in this storm. My mom's house was wiped out by the tornadoes in January that you were very instrumental in helping. So I want to thank you for that. But a lot of people are getting turned down by FEMA. And Kamala Harris came out and said it's going to be based on equity. How do we get to the bottom of, is that what's happening?
So questions about FEMA, people maybe be getting denied. Is this tied to Kamala Harris's suggestion that they're going to use things like racial equity rather than just the merits? I can tell you, I spoke with the FEMA administrator. They pledged to us to do it on the merits. We're going to make sure it's on the merits. I think the thing that Kevin Guthrie, our Division of Emergency Management Director, has pointed out is, getting denied by FEMA does not mean you're ultimately not going to get it. Sometimes you may need to provide more substantiation. So just see what they're looking for. You can go to the DRCs. We've got a number of disaster recovery centers now up in Southwest Florida, actually throughout the affected counties, even beyond Southwest Florida. People they can help you get through this process. It is a bureaucracy. When you talk about federal bureaucracy, there is red tape, but I think that you have an opportunity to provide the information. This is going to go through, a bureaucrat's going to look at it, and they need the boxes checked, and if not all the boxes checked, that's the notice you get. But that does not mean that you're ultimately not eligible. I think what it means is you may need to provide more information. Now, if there are eligible people who are being denied for some type of external characteristic, that's obviously unacceptable, and we will vigorously defend the people of this area. Yes?
Quick question about insurance in Florida. Early, I know it's only 2 weeks afterwards, what are the Florida insurance companies doing? What kind of handle do they have on the situation? Is it too early to really know yet?
Well, I think they're starting to know. I mean, for example, we had questions early on, even as the storm was hitting, about the citizens' property insurance, which I think most of you know is unfortunately undercapitalized, and it's something that if you had a major storm, could be in problems. The issue with citizens, though, is that they don't have quite as many policies in this part of the state as they do in some other parts of the state. So they feel like they're going to be able to pay the claims that are out, and that's going to be something that they will be able to do. I think one of the big issues that's going to arise with respect to some of the insurance is, was your damage due to wind or was your damage due to flood and water? And sometimes it's obvious, like if the winds knock your roof off, that's wind damage. So that would be something that a homeowner's policy would cover. If you're by some lake and it rises and you have 3 feet of water in your living room, well, that's a flood. How do you adjudicate if it's like surge coming in, which is being done with part of the wind, all this? I mean, my view is I think most of the damage has been water damage. I think if you look at Sanibel, Pine Island, and Fort Myers Beach, I think you have a lot of the wind damage, parts of Charlotte I've seen. But as you get into, I mean, obviously Cape Coral, you look at the homes, some of the homes were damaged from the exterior, but most of it was just the flooding that happened there. And the floods go down, you look at these homes, you don't even know that they're damaged because you'd have to get in and see inside, but they are damaged. So I think that's going to be an issue that they're going to be doing. But all these companies are regulated. They have to go through a stress test. The stress test this year by the regulators was a major hurricane in Tampa Bay, which is more populated than this area and probably more vulnerable in terms of the lower lying areas, and they were able to pass that. There's also redundancy in coverage, including we just did a special session of the legislature in May to add an additional layer of basically reinsurance coverage, which not all of them needed, but some of them did, so they will end up being utilized from there. But I think this wind versus water, you see it play out after every storm, but I think because we had so many flood, that's going to be something. And unfortunately, you're going to have some people who were told you don't live in a floodplain, you don't need flood insurance. So they bought the homeowner's policy, but maybe their damage was not because of the wind, it was because of the water. So then they're in a situation, they can get money from FEMA, but that is not going to be commensurate with having the flood policy. So we'll see that. I know there's some places, certainly some of the areas in Cape Coral would be required to have flood to get a mortgage, but not everyone does that if they don't have a mortgage either, even if they're in a flood zone. So I think that wind water thing, I think is going to be something that's going to be pretty big going down as we go in the weeks ahead. Yes?
So are you prepared for the insurance companies that are going to go under because they can't afford to pay these claims? I'm waiting 2 years with the same company because they didn't have the money. Now,
well, here's the thing. I mean, I think that, so obviously we did a special session. I think a lot of these companies would have gone under and we've not done that. But there's a lot of redundancy in coverage. When you have a major catastrophic event, the companies are able to access this other coverage in ways that they wouldn't if you have just more routine damage or more routine weather. And so there is a lot of resources. I think you have these damage assessments. There's, it's a decent number of homes that have been totally destroyed. But I would also say, I think a lot of the homes probably held up better than people would have thought, given the severity of the storm. So all that'll be worked out as we get going on. But basically, and Jimmy Petronas is working with them as our CFO. You know, they are cutting checks, and we're encouraging them to cut checks very quickly. I mean, this is not a situation where there's much doubt that there was a lot of damage done. Okay, everybody, we'll see you soon. Thanks so much.